It's December, and like many people, things get a little busy for me at this time of the year. Been a little slow in getting videos up lately, but not to worry. I haven't been sitting around twiddling my thumbs. Or have I? Hi everybody, I'm Joe Parker of the Pixel Depot. This channel covers model railroading, including planning, hints, tips, how-tos, and updates. And procrastination. There's a little bit of procrastination going on here sometimes. To stay up to date, click on the subscribe button. Also, click on the bell so you'll get notified when there is new content available. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Those links are in the description below. So it's been a little bit crazy around here lately, but I did want to give you a quick update about what's been going on. I've been busy with a whole bunch of different things, but that doesn't mean that the work here on the grunge or the main layout has stopped by any means. Some of the things that have happened since the last video are that I visited my first train show in almost 2 years. We had our December modeling session and as a result knocked off some of the projects in the Cleaning Up the Desk series. And last but not least, during my preparation for said modeling day, I got to looking at a couple of different areas on the layout. Long story short, I started work on a modeling project. It was not the Eastern Avenue corner that I talked about recently. That would just make too much sense. No, I started another project, because apparently I have the attention span of a squirrel. But let's talk about each one of these in a little bit more depth. I live in Massachusetts, and a December tradition is the annual train show put on by the Hub Division of the NMRA. I'm not sure they held it last year due to COVID, but this year it was business as usual. The crowd was pretty good, all things considered, and I was able to pick up a few things that would help me out on both of my layouts. In addition to getting some shopping done, we were able to check out some of the modular layouts that were on display at the show as well. Scales ranged from N all the way up to O if memory serves, and as usual, a couple of modules or scenes caught my eye, as you can see here. As far as shopping went, I was able to find some coal cars for the Conrail portion of the consolidated coal runs for my op sessions. I also found some kits at a great price at the Hub's White Elephant table. Always check out the White Elephant table. I'll talk more about those kits in a minute. Finally, I found this backdrop kit that I think will help on the grunge layout. If you recall, in the video I did on structures for the grunge, I mentioned there was one spot and industry that I hadn't quite figured out yet. At the show, I came across this kit from Lund Studios. Now, I've wanted to try out one of their kits for a while, but they're typically pretty large kits and they can be a bit on the pricey side, especially just if you want to try it out. This kit, however, is from their Quick Flats series, so it's small and fairly inexpensive. The kits are made from resin and they look to have some really nice brick detail, so I'm looking forward to trying that one out. The next train show I'll be attending is the big hobby show put on by the Amherst Railway Society in Springfield, Massachusetts. Maybe I'll see some of you there. I usually have a modeling session on the second Saturday of each month, where I have a small crew who comes out and helps me work on the layout. Sometimes we do operate, but more often than not, it's a work session. Since my last video, we held our monthly modeling session for December. Between myself and the crew, we were able to knock off a few projects. A couple of these were desk projects that I'll talk about shortly. But in addition to those, we built and weathered 2 new cars. These are the White Elephant kits I mentioned in the introduction. They're 54-foot covered hoppers for grain that will get used for the Conrail crew's Central Soya run during Monument City Terminal Division operating sessions. They're Accurail kits that I picked up for $5 each. I thought that was a pretty good steal. My nephew David, who's relatively new to modeling, has built a number of Accurail boxcar kits for me at previous modeling sessions. So he decided to tackle building out these 54-foot covered hoppers. He did comment that the hopper kits were just a little bit more complex to build than the boxcar kits were. But he also stated that it was a nice natural progression as he learns more about model building techniques. If you're new to modeling, taking on some of these Accurail kits can be a good way to learn things. I took care of weathering the Mopac car. The Santa Fe car remains to be weathered. Another major project that got taken care of during the modeling session was relabeling the car cards for the layout. Even with the relatively small number of cars I have on my layout, changing these over was going to be a pretty serious undertaking, so it was nice to get it taken care of. I use a 4-letter code to identify the type of car, its size, and its commodity. I recently revamped the coding system that I use to make it more consistent. My codes are based on the 1 and 2 letter codes that have been kicking around for, well, ever, basically. But my codes are much more specific that help me figure out ladings and help me to match waybills to car cards. I'm not sure the codes make much sense to my operators or really potentially to any other person on the planet, but they work for me. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to make a video about how I came up with that system. I did a video recently where I talked about identifying a bunch of projects as a follow-up to trying to clean up a desk in my work area. The first project covered in that video was a backdrop structure. You can check out the first part of that series for more information. In preparation for the modeling session, as I typically do, I went around and wrote down the available projects on sticky notes. That included the projects on the desk, as you can see here. I documented my sticky note process sometime back on my blog, but again, if you'd like me to make a video on it, let me know in the comments. The first desk project tackled was weathering this car, which has a little bit of an interesting story. It's an Atlas car that started out as SLC 1282. Based on its build date, it's a fit for the layout, but when I looked for weathering photos, it turned out that the San Luis Central acquired these cars a few years past my 1984 era. So I took this as a sign and a good opportunity to renumber the car, removing the old reporting marks and adding new ones for a fictitious railroad I'm calling the Tacoma, Puyallup, and DuPont. Puyallup, whose reporting marks happen to be TPD. You know, I'm not sure how I ended up with TPD as the reporting marks, but if you solve that mystery, let me know. After renumbering the sides and ends of the car, I weathered it using pan pastels. I based my weathering on photos that I found of the original, which consisted mostly of some dark gray coating of something that was all over the car. One way or the other, I think it came out pretty well. Another project we got finished was getting these Central Vermont cars done. There wasn't very much assembly needed on these except for adding side and end ladders and some bars on the doors, although I took it a step further by adding consolidated data stencil and yellow wheel dot decals to the sides. They do still need to get weathered. These will likely get used mostly on the small grunge layout. So although we were able to knock off a few of these desk projects, there are still a few left and I'll continue to chip away at those. It seems like nothing I do for the layout really follows a linear path. During my preparation for modeling day, I got to looking at a couple of different areas on the layout. This area in between Penmary Yard and the consolidated coal plant has always in the past been intended to have a Quonset hut and another small building here towards the front near the tracks. On the prototype, this area is home to the yard for the Canton Railroad and some open space that was once occupied by large oil tanks and the like. I only planned to have a couple of interchange tracks with the Canton Railroad here and didn't want to build out yet another yard, so I originally intended to leave this mostly open in the interest of having a scenic break. But a few things occurred to me. I'd like to have a little bit of a view block to help hide the fact that the National Gypsum Building in the background is just a flat, as well as to hide the abrupt transition to the wall. I also considered the large collection of both structure kits and tractor-trailer models that I have just way too many models. And I started to think that maybe this would be a good place for an offline trucking terminal. As I thought more about the truck terminal concept, I realized that if I was going to do it right, I needed to make sure it would work with the highway bridges that are going to run through this corner of the layout. In this area of Baltimore, both the Interstate 895 and Interstate 95 bridges cross over the railroad and each other at this location. I've had the I-895 bridge mocked up for quite a while, but I also took some time to mock up the I-95 bridges using foam core and some extruded foam pieces that I had hanging around. Once I did that, it looked like the I-95 bridge was way too tall, until I realized that the 895 bridge, as mocked up, wasn't as tall as it should be when finished because the plate girders for the 895 bridge weren't in place on the mock-up. So, despite me telling you not that long ago that my next major project was going to be the corner behind Cambridge Iron and Metal, that's going to go on the back burner for just a little while so I can build out the 895 bridge. This is despite a question at the modeling session about how long the Crown Cork and Seal building was going to sit on the table waiting to be finished. It's probably going to be a while. I'm working on a video about building the 895 bridge, and I'll probably at some point do a video or two on the I-95 bridges as well. The jury is still out a little bit on the trucking terminal, since I worry that it will end up being too close to the National Gypsum model and ruin the forced perspective I'm looking for there. Not to mention that the bridges might just provide the view block I'm looking for all on their own. But the terminal isn't off the table yet either, so stay tuned. As you can see, even if videos fall behind, there's usually something going on in the train room. I hope this has given you a little insight as to what's been happening as well as what's coming up in the future. So that's all for this episode. I've mentioned a bunch of possible future topics for videos here, so if any of those sound like something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe and click on the bell so you'll be the first to know when those videos go live. Finally, use the comments to include any other questions or suggestions. You can check out the links in the description to learn about supporting the channel on Patreon, as well as great Pixel Depot themed shirts and other merchandise. You can get more information about constructing the grunge layout by clicking up there, and you can get more great content just below that. I'm Joe Parker of the Pixel Depot. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll meet me next time in the train room. So it's been a little crazy.